Right into the roof of the net. Nice one. Straight down the middle. So a good performance from both teams here today.
Hello and welcome. You're watching Firstpost. I'm Rupha Ramani. Let's get started. Now, today is all about rivalries. Some bitter, some sweet, and some from the same household. Rivalry drives sport. We love a good contest or war of words. Anything that keeps up the intensity of any battle. But every time we come across teammates becoming rivals, the Mitchell Johnson-David Warner saga has taken the world by storm. We will bring you the latest on that and what Johnson had to say after his scathing article calling out David Warner for not owning up to a disgraceful act. And speaking of rivalries, come January, everyone will be waiting for this particular battle in tennis to resume, as if the last 1 year never really happened. It's the mother of all comebacks, not because of the extent of the injury or the time taken to heal, though both have been quite long and prolonged. A year-long layoff can be heart-wrenching, but it is to see the return of the biggest rivalry for the world's number one tennis player. Rafael Nadal announced his comeback some days ago. We look ahead to that right here on Firstpost. And how about some sibling rivalry to spice up the silent battle of wits that the game of chess is? India's Praggnanandhaa and Vaishali become the first brother-sister grandmaster duo from India. We bring you their story. So lots lined up here today. But first, a look at the headlines on Sports 360. Let's start with hockey. The Indian women's team beat New Zealand 3-2 in a nail-biting penalty shootout at the Junior World Cup match yesterday. The match went into full time with the scores tied at 3-all. It was Mumtaz Khan who scored the winning goal for India in the shootout. India will play their next match on Thursday against either South Korea or South Africa. The Indian men's hockey team also won a game at the Junior World Cup. They beat South Korea 4-2 in yesterday's opening encounter. India, who are the two-time junior world champions here, will next play Spain on Thursday. In football, Arsenal beat Luton Town 4-3 in a Premier League thriller last night. Arsenal took a 2-1 lead in the first half. Then Luton scored twice early in the second half to make the scores 3-2. Arsenal equalised in the 60th minute to tie the scores. Declan Rice, who scored the winning goal for Arsenal 7 minutes into second half injury time. In cricket, Pakistan's women's team secured a historic T20 series win against New Zealand. Pakistan batted first and scored 137 runs in their innings. They won the match by 10 runs after restricting New Zealand to 127. Pakistan have won 2 out of their 3 matches, sealing their first T20 series win over New Zealand. This is also the first time that Pakistan's women's team has won a T20 series away from home in the last 5 years. And staying with news from Pakistan, the Cricket Board, or PCB, has given the green light to their pacer Haris Rauf to play in Australia's Big Bash League. Rauf and PCB were engaged in a standoff after the bowler opted out of the national squad for a 3-test series against Australia. PCB criticised Rauf for not putting national duty above franchisee cricket. Now Rauf has been allowed to play 5 matches for his Big Bash team, the Melbourne Stars. And England batter Harry Brook has deleted all social media apps from his mobile phone. The 24-year-old says he's doing this to shield himself from negativity. Brook says deleting social media from his mobile phone has really helped in improving his mental health. Now, Australia have had a great cricketing year. They were crowned World Test Champions in June. A month later, in July, they beat their arch-rivals England to retain the Ashes. In November, they were also the ODI World Cup champions after beating India. Throughout the year, the Aussie squad has been largely unchanged. Seasoned players like Captain Pat Cummins, Big Show Glenn Maxwell and Pace King Mitchell Starc have been part of the setup. Another player who has been a constant for the Baggy Greens has been David Warner. Now, 37-year-old David Warner is a former captain and Test vice-captain for Australia. He's quite popular in India, especially for his on-field dance moves, but Warner is facing quite a bit of a harsh criticism. His former teammate Mitchell Johnson is not holding back at all. Johnson has now taken multiple digs at Warner, but why is this really happening? Here's a primer for you. Now see, Warner is expected to play his final test series for Australia in a few days. Pakistan are in Australia for a 3-test match series. The first match will be played next week, but the series will end in January next year, and this will be Warner's final test stint for his country. Warner's phenomenal journey in Test cricket is nearing an end, and what a career the batter has had. Warner has batted in 199 innings out of 109 matches. He has scored over 8,000 runs. He's only the 7th Australian batter to cross the 8,000 run mark in Test cricket. His highest score was when he hit a triple century against Pakistan back in 2019. Warner remained unbeaten at 335 runs and was awarded Player of the Match. Warner has played some big innings with his bat. He has scored 25 centuries and 36 half-centuries in his illustrious long Test cricket career. Now, Test cricket, as we know, is arguably the toughest format when compared to ODIs and T20s. It takes a toll on you physically and mentally. And the numbers show that Warner has been a star performer for Australia. Well, not according to former teammate Mitchell Johnson. You see, after such an illustrious career, any cricketer would expect a farewell. So does Warner, but Mitchell doesn't feel Warner deserves one. That's because Johnson thinks Warner was part of one of the most controversial moments that marred Australia cricket. In 2018, the Australian Test team were accused of using sandpaper to tamper the red ball. It came to be known as the infamous sandpaper scandal. The captain was Steve Smith, but the vice-captain was David Warner. They were both charged by Australian Cricket Board and was sanctioned. Warner was further charged for developing the plan in the first place, and he was the first to respond to the charges. There was a 2-year suspension or a ban on both Smith and Warner. Warner decided to take a break from cricket and, of course, spend time with his family. But in 2019, the bans on Smith and Warner were lifted and they both returned to play Test cricket. Now, it's because of the sandpaper scandal that Johnson has some scathing remarks for Warner. Here's what he said in an article that he wrote. He said, and I quote, "It's been 5 years and David Warner has still never really owned the ball tampering scandal. Now, the way he is going out is underpinned by more of the same arrogance and disrespect to our country. As we prepare for David Warner's farewell series, can somebody please tell me why? Why a struggling Test opener gets to nominate his own retirement date? And why a player at the centre of one of the biggest scandals in Australian cricket history warrants a hero's send-off?" Now, Johnson's statement has spread like wildfire through the Aussie camp and really world over. The first to respond was Usman Khwaja, who called Warner his hero. Next in line was Glenn Maxwell. He said, and I quote, "Warner has been an absolute champion of Australian cricket." It looks like there are a few takers of Johnson's stinging criticism, but it has definitely created a rift among the Aussies. And Johnson is not backing down either. On the podcast called The Mitchell Johnson Show, which is co-hosted by journalist Bharat Sundaresan and Johnson himself, the Aussie pacer spoke about why he has written multiple articles calling out Warner. The first one was written in April, where Johnson demanded accountability from Warner. During the podcast, Johnson spoke about why he decided to continue writing against Warner. Here's what he revealed.
When I responded to that, and then I got a message from Dave, which was quite personal, and I tried to ring him to try and talk to him about it, which I've always been open. I know I've been open to the guys. When I finished playing, I said, if I'm in the media and I'm writing things or saying things that you don't like, just come and speak to me. Like it was never a personal thing then until probably this point. This is probably what drove me to writing the article as well, part of it. It's definitely a factor for sure.
Now, clearly things have gotten personal between the two Australians. When asked about whether Johnson really meant the dig at Warner, now he said, "I don't know whether I regret it. I'm only repeating what's happened. It's probably the way I said it. It's taken the article down in a different path in a way. I do maybe wish that I could have said it in a different way, or maybe just left it out. It is what it is." That's what he said, and at least that's what Johnson is saying. After Warner, Johnson went after another Aussie, George Bailey, who's now the chairman of selectors for Australia cricket. In the same article where Johnson dissed Warner, he shot back at Bailey. Johnson questioned if Bailey has close relationships with some of the Aussie players, indirectly questioning why Warner was picked in the Test team in the first place. Talking to Bharat on the podcast, Johnson revealed that he had earlier gotten a stinging text message from Bailey too, regarding a separate article Johnson had written. And now, after the Warner piece, Bailey again retorted, indicating that all was not well up there with Johnson, which was rightfully rankling and upset Johnson.
And which is actually, that's another point, which is really disappointing, to say that, to ask if I'm okay because I've had mental health issues, is pretty much downplaying my article and putting it on mental health, which is quite disgusting, I think. But
now, Johnson and Warner were teammates between 2009 and 2015. In 2013, George Bailey was also a part of their team. These players have shared their locker room together. They've won matches for their country together, but things have clearly taken a completely different turn. Their infighting is personal and is spilling out on the professional stage. Australia is known to stick together like a band of brothers. Through thick and thin, through spats and ugly controversies, they always have each other's backs, no matter what the accusations or allegations have been. This is the first time an Aussie is calling out one from his own band, one that he believes to have made a disgraceful contribution to Australia cricket. Now, if I were an Aussie fan, I'd be internally screaming because of how the Johnson and Warner rivalry is playing out. Now, I'll start this next story with a little short clip. Take a look.
After 1 year outside of the tour, I think it's the right moment to be back. I have been working hard and feeling much better the last couple of weeks. So I feel ready to announce that I will be back in Brisbane the first week of the season.
That's former world number one Rafael Nadal announcing his comeback in January at the Brisbane ATP event. And of course, that emotional announcement that he made on his social media platform was sure to send goosebumps down everyone's spine. Now, this is the news that just about every tennis fan was waiting for. Now, I say tennis fan and not Rafael Nadal fan, because as a lover of sport, there is nothing you want more than great tennis and a rivalry that has really stood the test of time. Nadal says in that video he released just some days back that he did not want his career to end in a press conference. He did not play the sport for so long to just give in. The kind of a finish that he chooses to, and it's fitting that a year after, that is a year-long break, a long while for any sports person to stay away, the man who set the bar for perseverance and never really giving up on the court with his sheer stamina is announcing his comeback. At the hard courts that put a pause on his career. Now, much has happened, of course, in the year that Rafael Nadal stayed away from the tennis courts. Novak Djokovic has overtaken him with the most number of Grand Slam titles to his name, equaling Margaret Court for the most by any human being in tennis, 24. Carlos Alcaraz has staked his claim as Spain's new matador. Yannick Sinner from Italy has made waves in poking holes in the quests of both Alcaraz and Djokovic. With one of the biggest powerhouses of tennis missing in action, younger athletes who have shown great promise have also been jostling about to occupy the vacuum and challenge the man who sits at the helm of it all right now, Novak Djokovic. And much of this comeback announcement has undoubtedly got everyone excited to possibly seeing a Djokovic-Nadal face-off sometime very soon next year once again. But it won't be easy, and it's something Nadal himself has acknowledged. The reason Rafael Nadal had to stay away was because of a serious hip injury he had picked up during the Australian Open campaign in 2023. He underwent a surgery in June and started training only in October. And it has not been an easy road up until this point.
I have been afraid to announce things because in the end it's a year without competing and it's a hip operation. But what worries me the most is not the hip, it's everything else.
Nadal is in uncharted territory. That itself isn't new to him, but the fact that there is a fear and a lot of nerves around not the injury itself, but how he will feel and deliver, and whether he will be just as good as he was when he left the sport briefly, is something that exists and it isn't lost on him.
It's been a long time, so I hope, first of all, to feel again those nerves, that illusion, those fears, those doubts. I expect from myself not to expect anything. This is the truth. To have the ability not to demand myself what I have demanded myself throughout my career. I believe I'm in a different moment, in a different situation and in an unexplored terrain. I've internalized what I have had throughout my life, which is to demand myself the maximum. And right now what I really hope is to be able not to do that, not to demand me the maximum, to accept that things are going to be very difficult at the beginning and to give myself the necessary time and forgive myself if things go wrong at the beginning, which is a very big possibility.
De aceptar que las cosas van a ser muy difíciles al comienzo.
Now, what makes superstars most endearing, most real to their fans is their vulnerability of accepting the shortcomings or the challenges and really talking of their biggest fears. Nadal is surely nervous and afraid of how things will pan out once he steps onto that court. His uncle, Tony, spoke of how he did struggle initially when he got back to training again after the surgery. And with competitive tennis, it's going to be all the more difficult. The noise, how much you can push yourself, when to accelerate, and really understanding the body now more than ever is something Rafael Nadal will have to deal with, more so at this point. And then, of course, there is the challenge of the younger crop as well as his nemesis, Novak Djokovic, who, on the contrary, is reverse aging with the kind of fitness that he has displayed all the year through. The world number one has been unbeatable and more hungry than ever before to continue his reign at the top of the world. The big question, of course, is while Novak has unleashed another side, another level, and raised the bar further, even with another year having gone by, Nadal faces the tough question of how good he will feel and look coming back after his long hiatus, and whether he can get there again. He admits it's difficult, but is aware he has to trust the process.
I think I'm ready and I trust and hope that things go well and that it gives me the opportunity to enjoy myself on the court.
That's one thing we have seen him say over and over again over the last few days, and that is what gives plenty of hope, that he wants to enjoy his tennis again. He wants the fear to transform into opportunity, the anxiousness to give way to positivity and embracing the challenge more instead of running away from it. And running away he isn't. When was the last time you saw an athlete miss a whole year of his or her career owing to an injury to come back stronger? Indian cricketer Jasprit Bumrah is one prime example. That career-threatening back injury was horrific, but the speedster came back stronger and much more in control than he has in the past. Now, I know there is no direct comparison here and no fair comparison here, but so many women athletes have had to hit pause for several months because of pregnancies that are, as we know, far more difficult mentally, emotionally, and physically to bounce back from, and they have done so with success, like Serena Williams and Carolina Wozniacki now in tennis, and India's MC Mary Kom in boxing. It isn't impossible, but the road ahead is surely far from being an easy one, and Rafael Nadal acknowledges that. The game has progressed as it always does in his absence. It is not just his familiar foe who has developed yet another gear, but also many challengers who are eager to punch above their weight. Nadal has had his fair share of injuries owing to just the kind of tennis he plays, so rigorous and physically brutal, but this has to be his worst. And 2024 will prove to be his most challenging year yet. The biggest fear for any athlete is for the game to tell them to stop, the sport itself defeating them and telling them they just aren't good enough anymore. Nadal is aware of that fear, of his comeback, that is one of the most anticipated ones, not going to plan. And he says he's prepared mentally even if that happens. But to walk away without even trying would be far worse. That's what sport is ultimately about, to always accept a fresh challenge and attempt to scale that. If you do, it's great, and if not, that's okay too. The point is to never give up, and who has symbolized that quality in tennis more than Rafael Nadal? Now, the world of chess had a one-of-a-kind, or should I say two-of-a-kind occurrence. Chess now has its first brother-sister grandmasters duo. Now, grandmaster is the highest title that is awarded to a chess player, and India has the first sibling grandmaster pair. This was after Vaishali Rameshbabu followed her brother. Not many of you know this, but Vaishali is the sister of world number 13 Praggnanandhaa, and the brother-sister duo have written the record books. Vaishali has now become the third Indian woman to be crowned grandmaster. Now, we always talk of sibling rivalry in homes, but this achievement has taken their rivalry onto the international stage, with both qualifying for the very prestigious Candidates Tournament scheduled to take place early next year, a contest where the best chess players in the world compete against each other. So how did Vaishali and her brother Praggnanandhaa achieve this feat? And what's so special about this pair? Take Take a look.
In the last decade, very few have matched up to the class of Indian chess prodigy R. Praggnanandhaa. In 2016, Praggnanandhaa scripted history by becoming the youngest grandmaster at the age of 12. He is only the second Indian to make it to a Chess World Cup final. It was first done by Indian grandmaster Vishwanathan Anand. Though Praggnanandhaa lost in the final hurdle, he set a new record for being the youngest chess player to reach the final. As Praggnanandhaa was climbing the world chess ladder, a family member diligently waited for her time to shine. It was his sister, Vaishali Rameshbabu. Praggnanandhaa and Vaishali were born and raised in the southern Indian city of Chennai. Vaishali is the elder of the two and has been playing chess for a longer time. She was one of the first competitors that Praggnanandhaa had to face while growing up. The siblings began their journey by playing chess in local competitions in Chennai. But slowly, they both outplayed everybody. Praggnanandhaa was the first to make it to the global stage. He has been on a record-breaking spree ever since he turned grandmaster. And it looks like his sister wanted to join the party. Vaishali has become the latest grandmaster in chess. This came after she beat Turkey's Tamir Tariq Selbes in the 4th El Llobregat Open in Spain. After the win, Vaishali's FIDE ratings surpassed the 2,500 mark, automatically qualifying her for Grandmaster. Vaishali has now become the third Indian woman to be crowned Grandmaster. She now joins the elite list with Koneru Hampi and Harika Dronavalli. But there's one record that Vaishali has scripted that no one else has achieved before, and it wouldn't have been possible without her achieving the title of Grandmaster. Vaishali and Praggnanandhaa have become the first brother-sister duo to become grandmasters, a unique record for India and the Rameshbabu family. And sibling rivalry had a lot to play in it. After becoming grandmaster, here's what Vaishali said about what motivated her.
When Praggnanandhaa became the youngest international master, he crossed my rating for the first time. Suddenly at home, the focus was entirely on him. It upset me. I don't think I managed those emotions well.
And her younger brother understood where Vaishali was coming from. Here's what he had to say.
It's never easy for the sibling who's on the other side. I think somewhere in her head, it converted into pressure. The pressure to perform and not be ignored.
We're not sure how long the sibling rivalry will continue, but for now, it's time for celebration in the Rameshbabu family.
Now we've come to the end of our show here, and like always, we leave you with our parting shot, calling it the last serve. Now here's an unboxing moment for the Guinness World Record by the father of Indian shuttler Sathvik Sairaj, Ranki Reddy. During a men's doubles match against Malaysia, Ranki Reddy's shot clocked unimaginable speeds of 565 kilometers per hour, a new world record. But what marks our last serve today is a look on his father's face. Nothing could beat that look of pride on the father's face. But yes, the truest cheerleaders for every sports person is clearly their parents. But that about does it here on Firstpost. Thanks so much for watching here today with us. And I'll of course see you again tomorrow. Till then, take care. Bye-bye.